The car didn't move for 5 hours, and my dad never saw anyone inside. I'm 22 now, fresh out of college, but this started long before that. Back when I was just a kid. My family has lived in the same 3-story house for as long as I can remember. Quiet street, nice neighborhood, the kind of place where nothing strange is supposed to happen. But something has been happening, and now I'm sure it's been going on for years. The first time anything felt off, I was still in middle school. One weekend morning, I came downstairs and heard my parents talking in the kitchen. My dad sounded tense, more serious than usual. I only caught a few words, something like, "It happened again." When I asked them about it, they brushed me off. It wasn't until later that my older brother told me the truth. The night before, my dad had been working late in his office on the 3rd floor. Around midnight, he noticed a large SUV slowly moving down our street. Not just slow, almost unnatural, like it was barely moving at all. First, he ignored it. Then the same car came back, this time from the opposite direction. And then it stopped, right across from our house. My dad watched it for a while, expecting someone to get out. No one did. No doors opened. No lights turned on. Nothing. The car just sat there. Eventually, he went back to work, checking the window every now and then. Hours passed. Still nothing. At some point, he fell asleep at his desk. When he woke up around 5:30 in the morning, the car was still there. Same spot. No movement. He said that moment didn't feel real, like something was wrong in a way he couldn't explain. The car finally left before sunrise. We all assumed it was nothing. Maybe someone resting. Maybe someone lost. But it didn't feel like that to him. Years passed. Life moved on. Then I turned 15. One night, I was in my room making music. My desk faced the window so I could always see the street outside. It was late, quiet, peaceful. Then I noticed a flicker of light. First, I thought it was nothing. But then it happened again. I looked outside. 3 cars were slowly moving down the street in a line. And someone inside them was shining flashlights at the houses. Not casually, deliberately. They swept the beams across windows, doors, yards, like they were searching for something. Then the light moved toward my house. I froze. When the beams started rising toward my window, I dropped to the floor without thinking. A second later, light filled my room. It slid across the ceiling, paused, then disappeared. I stayed down, barely breathing. After about 20 seconds, I slowly stood up and looked outside again. The cars were already far down the street. And then they were gone. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I told my parents everything. We all agreed it had to be people scouting houses. My dad installed cameras after that, front yard, backyard, everything. We thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. A couple of years later, something worse happened. A contractor was doing work in our backyard when he found something hidden in the bushes near the fence. Camera. Small. About the size of a car key. It wasn't recording anymore, the battery was dead. There was no storage inside either, which meant one thing. It had probably been sending live footage to someone nearby. Someone who had been watching our house in real time. We had no idea how long it had been there. My dad went through security footage but found nothing. No one placing it. No suspicious movement. We reported it, but nothing came from it. And once again, life moved on. Until the new neighbors arrived. They moved in next door quickly. A young couple. No kids. That alone felt a little strange given the size of the house, but not enough to question. First, everything seemed normal. Then I started noticing something. Late at night or really early in the morning, I would see them standing at their upstairs window, looking into our yard. Not sitting, not casually glancing, just standing there, watching. At first, I told myself I was overthinking it. But then one night, while walking my dog, I saw something I couldn't ignore. They were in their kitchen, sitting at the table, and they weren't alone. There was a third person with them, a man I had never seen before. He stood out immediately, completely bald, muscular, thick eyebrows, the kind of face you don't forget. As I walked past, the woman suddenly got up and closed the curtains. Fast. She never looked directly at me, but it felt like she knew I was watching. That image stuck with me for years. And then last week, everything came together. My family took a trip to Paris. It was supposed to be a happy trip. My brother was likely going to propose to his girlfriend. One night, we were all sitting in a bar, talking, laughing. I wasn't really paying attention. I was just looking around the room, and then I saw him, the man from my neighbor's house, sitting alone, drinking, watching. At first, I thought I was mistaken. There was no way. The odds didn't make sense. But the more I looked, the more certain I became. It was him. Then he looked at me. We locked eyes. And in that moment, I knew he recognized me too. There was no confusion on his face. No hesitation. Just awareness. Then, without finishing his drink, he stood up and walked away. I ran after him, but he was gone. Completely gone. I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence, until I saw him again. A few days later, we were walking through the city during the day. Crowded streets, tourists everywhere. And there he was, about 50 feet away, holding a professional camera, pointed in our direction. He wasn't just there. He was watching us. Again. Before I could react, he turned a corner and disappeared. That's when I told my parents everything. This time, they believed me. My dad even considered ending the trip early. We didn't, but nothing felt normal after that. When we got home, he checked all the security footage again. Nothing. No sign of anyone. No evidence. Just like before. But I know what I saw. And now, when I think about everything, the car, the flashlights, the hidden camera, the neighbors, that man, it doesn't feel random anymore. It feels connected. Like someone has been watching us for years. Waiting. And whatever they want. I don't think they're done yet. The smell hit me first, and nothing in that forest should have smelled like that. I've been hiking the same trails near the mountains for years. I know them well enough that I don't usually worry about getting lost. It's my way of clearing my head, especially when something's bothering me. That night, something was bothering me. I got some bad news earlier in the day. Bad enough that sitting at home felt impossible. So around 8 p.m., I grabbed my gear and headed out. It wasn't supposed to be a long hike, just enough to calm down and maybe tire myself out. Night hiking wasn't new to me, but the fog that night was. By the time I got deeper into the trail, visibility had dropped to maybe 20 feet. Everything beyond that was just gray. I tried using my flashlight, but it made things worse. The light bounced back off the fog, blinding me, so I turned it off. I let my eyes adjust and kept walking. I had music playing through one earbud, something I always did to keep animals away. It usually made me feel safer. About an hour in, I stopped walking, because I smelled something. It was faint, but it didn't belong there. Perfume. A soft, floral scent, like someone had just walked past me. I stood still, looking around, even though I knew I wouldn't see anything. The fog swallowed everything. A few seconds later, the smell was gone. Just like that, I told myself it was nothing, maybe my mind playing tricks, and I kept walking. 10 minutes later, I smelled something else. This time it was familiar. Smoke, like a campfire. That made more sense. Someone could have been camping nearby. Maybe that explained the perfume too. But then again, why did the smell disappear so quickly? It only lasted about half a minute. Then it was gone. Completely. That's when I started feeling uneasy. Still, I didn't turn back. I should have. A few minutes later, I caught a third scent. This one stopped me in my tracks. It was earthy, herbal, strange, and somehow familiar. It reminded me of something from my childhood, but I couldn't place it. That feeling, recognizing something but not knowing why, made it worse. Because I knew one thing for sure. That smell didn't belong in the middle of a cold, foggy trail at night. At that point, I considered heading back. But I didn't. There was a small overlook ahead, a place I'd been to many times. I figured I'd go there, sit down, clear my head, and then decide what to do. So I kept going. For a while, everything felt normal again. No smells, no sounds, just silence. And then I saw it. A light, up on the ridge to my left. The ridge runs parallel to the trail about 100 feet higher. There's no path up there, no safe way to climb it. I knew that for a fact. But someone was up there. I could see a flashlight beam turning on and off, sweeping across the ridge in short bursts. On, sweep, off. Then a few seconds later, on again in a different spot. My stomach dropped. That's when I realized something else. If I could see them, they could probably hear me. My music. I immediately pulled out my earbud and turned it off. And then I listened. First nothing. Then whistling. Soft. Casual. Like someone passing time. That scared me more than anything. Because it meant they weren't lost. They were comfortable. I stood there, frozen, trying to decide what to do. Turning back felt like the smart choice. But something in me didn't want to panic. The overlook was close, so I kept moving. When I finally reached it, I felt a brief moment of relief, until I saw what was waiting there. On a flat rock near the edge, there was a small stone sculpture, carefully placed, deliberate, like someone had left it there for a reason. That was it. Every instinct in my body told me to leave. I turned around immediately and started walking back the way I came. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, fast, coming straight toward me. I didn't have time to think. Whoever it was, they were close. Too close. Running wasn't an option. So I stopped and waited. The footsteps got louder, closer, right in front of me, and then they stopped. Just like that. Silence. Complete silence. I stared into the fog, trying to see anything. Nothing. But I knew. Someone had just run straight at me and stopped within a few feet. I slowly reached into my pocket and pulled out the small knife I carried. My hands were shaking. I didn't say anything. Neither did they. If they were there, they weren't moving. And somehow that was worse, because it meant they were choosing not to. After a few seconds, I realized something terrifying. To get back to my car, I had to keep walking forward, toward where those footsteps came from. I didn't want to, but I had no choice. So I moved. Slowly, carefully. Every step felt wrong. I expected to see someone at any moment, but there was nothing, just fog. After a while, I started to think maybe they had left. Maybe they ran off while I couldn't hear. But then, I heard it. Another step. Behind me. Soft. Perfectly timed with mine. I turned around. Nothing. Just fog. I kept walking. And again, a step. Behind me. Matching me. Whoever it was, they were following me, staying just out of sight. That went on for what felt like forever. Then suddenly, crash, something slammed through the bushes behind me. Loud, violent. I jumped and shouted without thinking. I turned. Nothing. But this time I didn't wait. I ran, as fast as I could. Branches snapped behind me. Heavy footsteps crashed through the brush. They were chasing me. I didn't look back again. I just ran, faster than I ever had. I didn't stop until I saw my car. I got in, locked the doors, and sat there trying to breathe. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I don't know what was out there that night. I don't know who or what was following me. But I know this. It knew exactly where I was, the entire time. And if I had stayed there even a few seconds longer, I don't think I would have made it back. The footsteps upstairs followed the exact same path every single night, even though no one was living there. I was 15 when my parents were going through a messy divorce. Things at home were tense all the time, and eventually my mom decided it would be best if I stayed somewhere else for a few weeks. That's how I ended up at my great-aunt Lucy's place in upstate Vermont. I barely knew her. She lived alone in a massive old Victorian house that had been converted into apartments decades ago. She owned the entire building but only lived on the first floor. The second and third floors were meant to be rented out. When I got there, the place felt strange. Not in an obvious way. It was clean, well-kept, even beautiful. High ceilings, polished wooden floors, old-fashioned details everywhere. But something about it felt off. The first thing I noticed was Aunt Lucy herself. She avoided parts of her own home. There was a large master bedroom with tall windows and antique furniture. Easily the nicest room in the house. But she didn't sleep there. Instead, she used a small den near the living room. When I asked her why, she gave a quick answer. Too much morning light. It didn't make sense, but the way she looked at me after I asked made it clear she didn't want to talk about it. So I dropped it. For the first few nights, everything was normal. Then I started hearing the footsteps. Late at night, usually after midnight, coming from the floor above us. At first, I assumed it was a tenant. Someone walking around, maybe working late. But there was something strange about it. The pattern. It wasn't random movement. It was pacing, back and forth. Same path, same rhythm, over and over again. After about a week, I finally mentioned it during breakfast. Aunt Lucy didn't react the way I expected. She just paused, and then said, "No one lives up there right now." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She told me the entire second floor had been empty for over a month. I tried to explain what I'd been hearing every night, but she dismissed it immediately. "Old houses make noise," she said. "It's just the wood settling." That didn't sit right with me, because I knew what footsteps sounded like. And that was footsteps. The next day, I asked if I could see the empty apartment upstairs. She hesitated. For a moment, I thought she'd say no, but eventually she agreed. We walked up the narrow staircase, and she unlocked the door. The apartment was completely empty. No furniture, no personal items, just bare rooms and hardwood floors. At first, everything looked normal, until I looked down. There were marks on the floor, scuff marks, fresh ones. They formed a clear path across the room from one end to the other, back and forth, exactly like the footsteps I'd been hearing. I pointed it out immediately. Aunt Lucy barely glanced at it. "That's from the last tenant," she said quickly. But I could tell she didn't believe that. Neither did I. Those marks looked recent, like someone had been walking that exact path, over and over again. We went back downstairs, and she didn't say another word about it. That night, she did something unusual. She asked me to watch a movie with her. We hadn't done that before. Felt intentional, like she didn't want me alone. We sat in the living room watching some old film, and then the footsteps started. Loud, clear, right above us, back and forth, same pattern. I turned to look at her. She didn't react. She just reached for the remote and turned the volume up, like she couldn't hear it, or didn't want to. That moment stuck with me, because it told me one thing. She knew. The next day, I called my mom. I told her everything. The footsteps, the empty apartment, the marks on the floor. There was a long pause on the phone. Then she said something that made everything worse. "Don't bring that up with your aunt again." Her voice sounded uneasy. "It's a sensitive topic." Sensitive? That didn't answer anything. It just made it clear she knew something too. After that, I stopped asking questions. But I didn't stop listening. Every night, the footsteps continued. Same time, same path, like something was stuck repeating the same motion. Then, one night near the end of my stay, something changed. I woke up around 2 a.m. Everything was quiet. No footsteps. That alone felt wrong. I got up to use the bathroom, trying not to think about it. On my way back to my room, I passed the staircase that led upstairs. And that's when I saw it. The door at the bottom of the stairs was slightly open, just a few inches. I was sure it had been closed before. I stared at it for a moment. Then I noticed something else. Light, faint, moving, coming from upstairs, like someone walking around with a flashlight. I didn't move. I just stood there, frozen, watching that soft glow shift across the walls, back and forth, same path. Then the light disappeared. The footsteps didn't come back that night. I quietly went back to my room and locked the door. I didn't tell Aunt Lucy what I saw. I didn't tell anyone. I just wanted to leave. When my stay finally ended, I went home and tried to forget about it. But I couldn't. I asked my mom again what was going on. She refused to explain. And that caused a serious distance between us for a long time. Years later, I heard something from a cousin. Apparently, there had been an incident in that house back in the 90s. Someone had died in the second-floor apartment. The details were unclear, and the family had tried to keep it quiet. Around that same time, Aunt Lucy had inherited the property. I don't believe in ghosts. I never have. So I've tried to come up with logical explanations. Maybe someone was secretly living up there. Maybe Aunt Lucy was hiding something or someone. Maybe there was something going on that I just couldn't understand at that age. But none of those explanations fully make sense. Not with the empty apartment. Not with the footsteps. Not with the moving light. And definitely not with the way both my aunt and my mom refused to talk about it. Some things don't leave clear answers. But I know what I heard. Every night. Back and forth. Back and forth. Like someone was still there, walking the same path they never got to finish.